happen, but remember, you've got to be funky.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Between the Lanes. So glad you've joined us at this week's podcast. Again, if you are just joining us, man, we're glad you're here. We're really just getting started. Got a few podcasts before this. Go back and take a listen, see the journey we're on, and glad that you're with us. And we're going to do this week a little different. I'm gonna do an interview, and then next week, Dad will pick up an interview as well. So we'll separate this to two podcasts because we've got a guest that we know we want to stretch out over a couple different weeks. So joining me this week is JB Copeland. What's up, JB?
What's up? I'm glad to be here.
Man, I'm so glad that you're here. JB is such a blessing. I've known JB for a long time, and excited to get into what the journey of his life has looked like. He's got a really pretty big audience, at least from my perspective. You got a pretty big audience of people who are listening to you because of the journey that you've been on, what God's done in your life, and you're a person who has succeeded at high levels as an athlete, and that journey has taken you to some highs and some lows. Through that journey, you have been grew up in a Christian home, Christian environment, and that did not mean you were immune from significant trials.
Not at all.
And circumstances and situations. And so I want to give a little bit of that context as we start into this podcast to let people know what's this going to be about. Okay, so here we are between the lanes, look, navigating a lot of different things. And here's a guy who has a really amazing testimony and a great story. So JB, talk about your life. I like this. Look, I love history. I love context. I think to get to know you, we need to know where have you come from. What was your life like growing up? What were your interests? What did you devote yourself to?
Yeah, so before I go into that, it's just funny because probably like 6-7 years ago, and we've talked about this, but I just got in big trouble in college, and I'd failed a drug test, and my dad found out because my coaches told him, and actually my wife, she was like, went to my parents' house and was like, you need to help your son. I don't know what's going on. Because I had spilled the beans to her and just kind of let her know where I was at, which before she didn't know. But my dad flew me in from North Carolina. Like, he's really upset. And he picks me up from the airport. I don't think I'd slept in 48 hours. I looking rough. And takes me to a pastor's meeting at Gateway. I don't know what was going on, but I was just sitting there and I was like, this is terrible right now. But right after that, he was like, we're going to meet Todd Lane. And I was like, why? Why does he need to know my business or what? But really what it was is my dad wanted, you were his boss and he wanted you to know what was going on. And so I remember being in your office, probably one of the worst weeks of my life, just kind of having to tell you what was going on. And so, and then, 7 years later, it's here we are. And a lot has happened in those 7 years. And so, but yeah, I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana. Dad was a pastor, a coach, and was there for 6 years. And then he took a job in Arizona. We moved there for 3 years. And then when I was 10, we moved to Dallas. And my dad took a job at Gateway Church. And so sports was huge in my family. I'm the oldest of three brothers, and man, I just loved baseball and football, and I was raised in a Christian home. My dad was a pastor, my mom was a pastor's wife, and I didn't really know what normal was. I like as a kid, you don't really know what other families look like,
right,
especially in a pastor's home. And so to me, I think this is the thing that really threw me off, is to me, I thought my dad was perfect. And I thought that at a certain age when I started to mess up and I thought my youth pastor was perfect, I thought that there was something wrong with me. And I think that there was just a lack of vulnerability in the culture that I grew up in. Not because they didn't want to share it, but they didn't know how.
Yeah.
And so, and I just started messing up a lot in high school, and smoking weed and, drinking but at the same time, I'm excelling extremely in football and getting scholarship offers and whatnot. And so, I think looking back, there was just a lot of fear and anxiety that I was numbing.
Well, let's pause there for a second, because I want to now let me go back to where you started the story. Because I think it's a great testament to you, your dad, your family. Because I remember when your dad, sat up to me and said, "Hey, I want to bring JB in," and I knew a little bit about what was going on, but I think, when we talked about this one time, the realization I had was it was less about, well, there was a lot going on in you, but actually the why bring it to me? It was actually a moment about your dad. Of him realizing in my leadership role in him, there was an authority that I had in his life, and he wanted to be transparent, vulnerable about what was going on in his life with his son and in his family. And I thought it was an amazing move. He didn't have to do that, and I'm sure it was awkward for you and him. It's totally. You're like, what? Why in the world am I going to have a conversation with Todd? And yet it was really about transparency. And I think what it modeled, even for me, as his oversight in the role, was watching him do something he didn't have to do, but it was being transparent about the struggle that was going on in his life with his son, what his son was struggling with, and he was inviting perspective. He was inviting an outside voice, a pastor, to speak into it, not just to you, but actually to him as a dad, because it was something he's struggling with. And there's people today who might be watching this who are trying to figure out, look, I don't have the problem, but my child is struggling, and I don't know what to do. And I feel like if I talk to somebody about that, it's actually going to look bad on me, or it could affect my job, whatever the situation is. And I think what he found, I think what a lot of times what people find is what the enemy tries to convince us, hey, if you talk about that, it's going to destroy your life. And the enemy wants to keep us silent. And in reality, it's the coming forth, being transparent about an issue that actually brings it to light that then God can deal with. And I think that was part of the example then. And what it showed me just about your dad in that situation. And
we'll get to it, but I think that moment helped me in a moment years later where I had to get honest. And so looking back and just being like, well, if he did that, and what happened to him? Nothing really. I mean, it's like there was probably some counseling, but he modeled something that you could pick up on later. Okay, so now you're still as a you're a teenager growing up in church. You're a pastor's kid. There's a lot of stereotypes of PK kids. They're the ones that get the most trouble or whatever. I was that stereotype.
You helped perpetuate that stereotype. But the thing is, what I remember about you is you were a good kid, but didn't find out later that there was some internal struggles, some demons, if you will, that you were battling. And where did those pressures come from? What contributed to that?
So, a lot of people thought I was a good kid. I was very two-faced, if you will. And I say that and it sounds bad, but really what it was is there was a battle within me. I think I call it like this internal civil war that was going on within me between like what I know is right and what my body and my mind and my flesh is telling me to do, and like these fears that I'm trying to numb. And so what I've come to learn is a lot of the things that I was dealing with came from hurt. And here's the thing is I love my parents, and I love my mom, I love my dad. But a lot of the things that I walked through came back to, I wanted to please my dad. And, being the firstborn, you think your parents have it all figured out, and you think that like,
and they're learning on you.
And so this is what I've come to find out is there was a deep performance issue. My dad was my coach, and he was very serious about it. He was very serious about me being the best, and he was my baseball coach. He was my football coach. He was aggressive because that's how he was raised. And so from a young age, like, I have memories of like walking someone when pitching and him getting really mad at me, or these little things. And, you know, even me, I struck out looking at a tournament and I was probably 12, and, you know, we were in the semifinals and just got it all the way home. And looking back, like those moments really shaped me to like, I can't mess up. I got to be perfect. And I know that they're little things, but, but what I realized was my dad was extremely underfathered. And, some of the men in his life, most of the time, never really came through for him. And in his head, the way to love a son is to overfather them. It's like the pendulum goes back and forth. And and so at a point, you know, a year and a half ago, I came to that realization that my dad is awesome. And
he is awesome.
He is. But he wasn't loved like a son should be. And he tried to love me like he thought a son should be loved. And so that's where a lot of it came from. And then what reinforced that was my middle school and high school coaches. I went to South Lake Carroll, and it was extreme fear. Like, we do not mess up. There is no missing a tackle. There is no missing, you know, your read. I remember just getting screamed at by someone in 7th grade, and I'm a kid, you know.
Right.
And so it was just fear culture. It was, and that caught up to me. And so when I was a junior, they moved me to varsity, and that was when I first started drinking and smoking, and I didn't know what I just knew I needed something to take the edge off.
Is that what it was? Was it actually something for you, or was it peer pressure that first got it, or was it actually you looking for something?
Peer pressure first.
Okay. Yeah.
I think mixed in with that, there was a need to be loved, a need to be liked by friends. Yeah. And so it's like this. It was this beast that it all fed into. Just this deep insecurity, extreme people pleasing. You know, I didn't like myself, and so I had to find that from somewhere.
What? Tell me what that means. What didn't, you know? You were successful, and that what? Because I'm sure some people struggle with that same thing. They don't like themselves. But what didn't you like about yourself? What does that mean?
I just think that when I say I didn't like myself, I feel like I didn't know me. I didn't know myself. I had been shaped in a reality that wasn't really a true reality. And I say that a lot. It's like this fear had shaped me, and I was disconnected from me. And I didn't know God's voice. I didn't know my voice. It was just like, get in line, and this is how you are. And so it's like, it was just this extreme disconnection. And so when I say I didn't like me, you know, you can see by the decisions that I made, that was proof that I didn't. And that's, you know, self-sabotage, you know, self-hate, self-resentment, extreme insecurity. I was insecure. I didn't know me. I didn't know who I was. And that's what I mean when I say that.
Yeah. And really, because you didn't know you, all you knew to do is to respond to what other people said, and because you were in a performance culture, it was perform.
Yes.
I like how you said it, because I think that's where a lot of people find themselves, is you have it's a combination of multiple things that are at play. It's usually not just one thing, you know. So you have your base wiring, which is a people pleaser, a lot of firstborn tendencies that want to be high performers, want to please people. Then you're in a culture that's even more of that, and it just kind of builds, and that you found yourself then at a place of going, okay, so how do I deal with all this pressure?
Yes, and I didn't know. It's so subconscious, you know. You don't know where it's coming from. You just think that there's something wrong with you, and like, why do I have anxiety? Like, why am I freaking out? Like, why am I getting up in the mornings and like my stomach hurts and I'm scared to like go to a workout or whatever. It's just like this fear controlled me. And the only out I had that I knew was I have to numb this with substance. And so that became my story for a long time. And, you know, I got caught a couple times by my parents, but I was really good at being secretive because that was a part of the performance. I wanted, no matter what it was, no matter what I was doing, I still wanted to make my dad proud. I still wanted to make, you know, I wanted to live up to his name. And
do you think at some point too in that, the self-sabotaging was anything related to shame?
Oh yeah. I think that there's a shame cycle, and, you know, a quote I love is you can't hate yourself to change. You have to love yourself to change. And I think that shame fed into these feelings that I couldn't understand I didn't have the capacity to experience them.
Yeah.
So I had to numb them.
Yeah.
So it was just like over and over and over, that shame.
What did it look like? So and this might be focusing, I don't know, maybe there's just somebody, a young person who's in that sort of place who finds himself going, you're in church, you were hearing things. Where did the disconnect come from what you were maybe hearing spiritually? And maybe even take it away from your family or just, you were in church. Did you tune out, or did you find a way to reconcile the two? You're like, well, I can still do this and still have this spiritual life. Or how did those two things happen?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I went down for prayer or would have the camp experience, or it's like I would give my life to try and get right. I think that the overarching umbrella over my life was fear. I think that the foundation was fear. And I don't think that my interpretation or my iteration of God was out of a place of faith, because I don't think I never knew that. I didn't know what that meant. I heard it, but it's like, I can't really explain it, but it's like it couldn't stick.
Yeah.
And so I think that there was always just these two sides of me.
Yeah.
But for a long time, the fear, the Bible says, I did not give you a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. I mean, I heard that verse over and over again. But I was being ruled by a spirit of fear. And nothing good really helped me.
Yeah.
Because there was something inside me that was off. And so no matter what it was, the external, the things said in the sermons and the worship, and like it took something deeper for me to find that healing.
Yeah.
And not that it wasn't God, but that it was that I had to go and connect with God in a place away from where I'd been raised. It was like, I remember I told our campus pastor, and this kind of gets to the story, but just to kind of get them there, I came on at Gateway. I was a youth pastor. During this, I was still dealing with drug use and trying to numb the pain and trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. And I ended up asking for help and telling my dad, which was really hard. And I still wasn't completely honest, but I got as honest as I could. And I told my campus pastor, his name's Steve Thompson, and he's helped me so much. I love him. And I said, I need to go to rehab. And he said, he's like, you can't heal by the rushing waters. You have to go heal by the calm stream. And so I was like, that moment I was like, okay, I have to like remove myself from this environment, because I'm seeing all of it as performance.
Yeah.
There is the lens over my eyes right now, no matter what people are saying, no matter the motivations they have, no matter the worship song that's on, no matter the prayer that someone prays, there is a lens over my eyes right now. And I have to go and be reintroduced to who God actually is.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm imagining so many people who have experienced, we all work through our issues. I think every person has something in them that is some form of a secret.
Yeah.
Some weed that we're all having to at some point try to pull out. And so maybe someone has gotten really good at living sort of a double life, and are listening or watching at this point and going, okay, so I don't want to have to get to a point where my life comes crashing down because it got exposed or I destroyed my life or whatever. What would have been a point, even go back to high school, but as you've looked back now with a healthy perspective, that you can look back and go, if this would have changed either in my perspective, or is there something somebody else could have done? Like, what do you think? Could something have been different?
Maybe. I think that there were so many factors that came with the healing, which makes me know it was God, because everything from my dad's heart posture to my mom's heart posture to my little brothers to, my wife being involved and my heart posture, the true issue was that no one really knew me. And including myself. Like, that was the issue. And so if I could have gone back and there would have been a way to, get away and find myself and then be able to be honest, I think that I could have reconciled that quicker. Yeah. But I didn't know what I didn't know. That was the thing. I didn't know how to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Well, and again, it was such a, there is a hard thing about anybody can choose to live a life of deception.
Yes. And
that's the hard thing is you can put all sorts of accountabilities in place. Organizationally, you can put processes and policies in place. But if a person is truly bent on going a wrong direction, they can't hide it.
Yep.
And that's what's really challenging is to try to get somebody to a place of going, man, and this is part of what I think the heart that I have is to try to pull away a mystique of that hiding. I was thinking about you and just kind of thinking there was kind of a hiding in plain sight that you were doing. You're a very visible person because of your family. People knew you, and you're a strong personality, and just people have looked up to you. And yet you were hiding in plain sight and stripping away the mystique that was, how do I even get help?
Yeah.
And so people who are dealing with that to actually go, what kind of small step it would take to actually go, if I could just talk to somebody, I could just tell somebody, and actually embrace the consequence of it now. It's not that suddenly there's no consequence. Oh, wow, I took the mystique away. There wasn't a consequence. Oh, no. There might still be a consequence, but the sooner it's addressed, it's a much less consequence than if completely played out.
Yeah. And I think for me, and for a lot of people, we're scared of the consequence.
Yeah.
We're scared that if we're known at a very deep level within us, if we're known, that will be seen as not good enough. Mm. And that was the driving force. A thing that I learned is there's two core traumas. And that's I'm not enough, inadequacy. And the other core trauma is fear of abandonment. And so I believe mine, and I know that mine was I'm not enough. And if I tell people what I'm going through, not only am I going to prove to them that I'm not enough, but I'm going to prove to me that I'm not enough. But the consequences layered on top of that. I just don't on top of that, I don't want to get in trouble. I have my body is wired to keep me safe. My mind, it's that's a situation that's unsafe. And I think reframing that to realizing that's the safest situation is showing who you are and dealing with the consequence in front of you.
So you go to college. Okay, now we'll get back in the timeline of things that pushed you to where did that moment of realization come to you where you finally went, the consequences are worth it enough? And sometimes it's not on your own choice. Somebody goes, hey, we're dragging you into this or whatever.
Yep.
Talk about how it went kind of through college into your married life and what got you to the point of going, no more. This can't happen anymore?
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of external things that happen to me that it's something in rehab they call a firm resolution. It's a resolution that's external, which means something happens, whether you're caught, whether something bad happens, that you make a firm resolution that I'm done with this. And I would say I probably had 100 of those. But a firm resolution never sticks because it's deeper than that. It comes from an external source. And so, in college, I was a great athlete and I had dreams to go play in the NFL. But I couldn't stop smoking weed. I couldn't, I was so overran by fear that I couldn't perform. Like, it had caught up to me at that point.
Yeah.
I couldn't play the way that I knew I could play because I was paralyzed.
Wow.
And I dreaded anything to do with football because the fear just had overran me. But my time there, I failed my senior year. I failed my third drug test, and this is after I'd been retired. I'd gotten concussions, and they retired me, and that was when we met. And I'd been kicked off scholarship. And you would think at that point, from this, I could make a pretty big resolution to, I'm done with this. We're turning my life around. And I'm telling you, in my deepest thoughts and in my soul, I told myself we're done. But it wasn't enough.
Wow.
Because there was something so much deeper that was holding on to me, and it was that fear.
Yeah.
And
you said in therapy they call it a firm resolution.
Yeah.
But it's actually not that. It's actually deeper than that, because you think a firm resolution, that's like as bedrock as you're going to get.
Yeah.
But no, it's deeper than that.
It's deeper.
Talk about where you go deeper there.
So a true resolution comes with, I believe, is completely internal. And when it comes to this comes from the addiction cycle with the firm resolution. So the addiction cycle is this. It's restless, irritable, and discontent. And a lot of people live their lives this way. From being restless, irritable, and discontent, you begin to obsess over something. So for me, it was, how am I going to feel better? For some people, it's, how am I going to work harder? Whatever that addiction is. From the obsession, you begin to use. From using whatever it is that you're doing, you go on a spree. And that spree, when you go on that spree, you get caught. And when you get caught, or whatever happens, you make a firm resolution. And after you make a firm resolution, maybe it's a week or days or months, you begin, and you're restless, irritable, and discontent. So the issue is the restless. It's called RID, restless, irritable, and discontent. It's I'm discontent, I'm irritable, and I'm restless with life. And so that's where you have to focus the healing on. Like, why am I restless?
Yeah.
Why am I not content?
Yeah.
Why am I irritable?
Yeah.
Why am I angry?
Yeah.
Why am I jealous? Whatever it might be.
Yep.
And that's where God comes into the picture. And so that was where I really had to focus in on, what is this? And for me, I believe it was childhood trauma, generational trauma, a belief system that I had about myself and the world, and a belief that I had of God, of who I thought God was. And so all of those things kind of intertwined into who I thought I was. And at this point now, it's showing itself in my thought process and everyday actions.
Yeah.
And emotions.
So you have that moment, and your wife was a key part of this, and I think it's important in thinking about relationships and letting people in, and letting people, the accountability that comes with having a partner.
Yes.
That's there with you. That then it speaks to the broader picture of doing life in isolation or doing life with other people, even if that's just one other person who can see you from an outside perspective and call you to the carpet if they need to, or have just simply have a voice into your life to go, there's some unhealthy things that I'm seeing. We got to do something about that. So talk about the real moment of change, the process of change that happened.
Yeah. So failed that drug test and just ended up finishing up school. At this time, I'm still really good at playing both sides. Like I can talk myself out of things. Like before I can talk anyone else, I'm talking myself out of it, But, within a year, Chloe, my wife, and I are engaged. Within 6 months from then, we're married. Within 3 months from us being married, I'm the student coordinator at Gateway Dallas. Then COVID hits. And then a year later, I'm the pastor. When it came to being married, like I said, no one, like there were layers and layers and layers in front of who I actually was. And so, I mean, we're in situations where I'm at work, I can always go home. I can always put something between us to where you really don't know, I can take a step away or whatever it might be to, hide who I actually am.
Yep.
When it came to my wife, that was impossible.
Yep.
Now there was lying involved for a couple of years where like she knew what I was doing, but I wouldn't own up to it. And being caught multiple times and making that firm resolution. And I meant it. I'm like, Chloe, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. There's something wrong with me. I don't know what to do. But really I'm trying to talk I'm just trying to get back to good graces because this is a performance. And, I'm not really going after the true, the core of it, but I'm going after like the top layer of it, trying to just make sure things are okay. Which they weren't. And so, a couple of years go by, and April of 2022, you said I was hiding in plain sight. Well, that year, the beginning of that year of 2022, like my anxiety and the things that I was going through were out of this world. And I couldn't eat. And so I dropped probably 30 pounds.
Wow.
So
I remember that when I was like, man, I guess when you're not in football anymore and working out, you start to get a body that looks like this.
Yep.
Because you started dropping like that.
Yeah. And so hiding in plain sight wasn't as easy. People started to ask questions. My campus pastor would ask questions. Chloe's family would say things. And really, it's embarrassing to think that I looked like that. But really, I think it's a blessing because I wasn't able, God wouldn't let me hide anymore.
Yeah, no more hiding.
And I knew it was time to do something. I just didn't know what to do. And I had been praying, all that last year and going into the new year, like this has to be the year that something changes. Well, then April 27th of 2022, I have a panic attack. And I've never had a panic attack before. It's 11 p.m. Me and Chloe are watching a show, and I think I'm dying. Like it just, and I've never experienced anything like it. Like I've never been in such uncomfort, and my heart's beating. I think I'm having a heart attack. I don't know what's going on. And so I get, she rushes me to the emergency room. And they put me on, some medicine to make it stop. And I'm like, dang, like,
what was that?
For so long I've had control.
Yeah.
I can control the situation.
Yep.
I can, and over the years I'd lost more and more control of what was going on around me. But now it was like, God was like, you don't have any control. And for, I took 3 weeks off of work, and I would have little mini panic attacks and trying to figure it out. And at a certain point I was like, Chloe, I need to go to like the mental institution. Like there's something wrong with me. I have no control over my physical body. I can't eat. Like what's inside is now out.
It's now visible.
And so I was in therapy at the time with, her name's Nancy Houston. And we went to a couple sessions, and after a while, she's like, I can't help you. Like
You're beyond me.
You need to go to rehab. And I was like, okay, well, I can go to
That's saying a lot because Nancy's really good.
Yeah, no, I was jacked up. Really, it was just like, I wasn't completely honest, and Chloe knew it was up. And
so I want to pause this right here because you've led us right up to the point to to leave it as a cliffhanger for next week's podcast. So I want to say I want to recap just real quickly because next week we're going to get a picture of what God did to redeem and restore and put you at a place where you are today. But as people are examining just even this week, I think you just provide hope and inspiration because there's many people, and again, to some varying degree, who are living in some kind of secret in some way. They're hiding some kind of secret. They're living some kind of element of fake because they're afraid to let what's really happening out, and they're trying to please people. All the dynamics that you've talked about, and so if that's you, or if you know of somebody who has this kind of struggle, here's JB who can provide tremendous hope. And I want you to tune in next week because you're going to hear the redemptive side of the story. And you can already see how far he's come, but you're going to hear how that happened next week. So, God, I thank you for everyone who's tuned in this week. I just thank you for JB. Thank you for the message that you've put in his heart, what you've done in his life. Thank you for next week's episode as we hear more about what you've done. I pray for everybody listening and watching today, God, that you would turn the page in someone's life, redeem the story of what's happening either for someone today or maybe a child or someone in their life that needs to hear this story. God, let their lives be turned around for good towards you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
See you next week.